The night before my wedding, I had no idea my life was about to change forever. That evening, I'd stepped out just to drop off a box I'd forgotten. But when I came back, I carried not a gift in my hands, but a piercing silence in my heart. I'd been with Lucas Wagner for 3 years. He was successful, charismatic, and came from a highly respected family. His mother, Marianne, always treated me like her own daughter. She knew I'd lost my mother at a young age and kept that in her heart. His sister, Emily, had become like my childhood friend. Everything seemed perfect. At least that's what I thought. I hadn't planned to go to the hotel where the bachelor party was happening that night. But when I remembered how much Marianne wanted Lucas's grandfather to pin on his cufflinks during the ceremony, I decided to bring the little box myself. The hotel staff knew me. I'd organized many charity events there before, so they silently showed me to the private lounge. The door wasn't fully shut, and I heard Lucas's laughter inside. Then the words I overheard shattered not just one night, but my whole life. "You've got to be kidding, Lucas," his best friend Thomas said. "You're really marrying Mia?" A pause, then Lucas's alcohol-tinged voice. "Why not? On paper, it's perfect. Her family connections are amazing, and it'll do wonders for our finances. Plus, she's completely devoted to me." My blood ran cold, but the real blow came when he laughed and said, "She's just a placeholder. When someone better comes along, she's out." I squeezed the velvet box tight. Inside was more than a pair of cufflinks. It held our 3-year history and all the dreams I'd built. Now they lay buried in a moldy lie. I didn't cry. Instead, I felt a strange calm. On the way home, I clung to my thoughts, not my tears. I opened my laptop because Lucas wasn't just my fiancé, he was my business partner. That partnership had unlocked countless digital doors for me. Emails, financial records, client contracts. I spent hours digging. The deeper I went, the more I found. Offshore accounts, funneled payments, internal ledgers, even Emily didn't know about. And worst of all, messages between Lucas and a board member planning to start a new life after our honeymoon. Her name was Lena, and she'd be the guest of honor, seated front and center at my wedding. When I woke up the next morning, I still felt that quiet resolve. My hands didn't tremble as I applied my makeup, though I'd expected them to shake with excitement. I slipped all the documents into a cream-colored envelope and tucked it into the secret pocket of my bridal suit. When Marianne walked in, her eyes shone with joy. "The flowers have arrived, Mia," she said. "White peonies and blush roses, just as I imagined." Handing me the bouquet, she thought it was a symbol of love. I knew it would be my weapon of justice. As my bridesmaids swirled champagne around me, Emily appeared in the mirror behind me. "I still can't believe how lucky my brother is," she said, touching my shoulder. "You're going to look so amazing, you'll take his breath away." I smiled inwardly. "Yes, I will, but not in the way you think." I realized I wasn't the heroine of a fairy tale. I was in the middle of a battle. And now I had a weapon, the truth. At 11:43, I sent the final message. "All evidence in place. Journalist in position. Police contacted." I drew a deep breath and looked in the mirror one last time. My white wedding dress was my armor, and my red lipstick was my declaration of war. Time seemed to have almost stopped. Everyone else was rushing hairstylists adding final touches. Bridesmaids straightening their flowers. The coordinator calling into her radio to confirm placements. But I felt like I was moving to a completely different beat. From the outside, the bridal suite looked calm, but inside me, a storm was raging. Every time I touched the envelope, I remembered the laughter, the sneer, the words, temporary choice. Soon, all of that would be revealed to everyone. For the first time in my life, at a ceremony, all eyes would be on me. And not with admiration, but with shock. But I wasn't afraid, because I had the truth on my side. When preparations were finished, the coordinator knocked on my door. "Ms. Mia, everything is ready. Guests are seated. The groom is at the podium." Her tone was as clear as her voice in the radio, but my heart was even steadier. As my bridesmaids stepped out one by one, I smiled at each of them. Emily was last. When she came up and hugged me, I felt a small pang. Because in a moment, she would learn her brother's true face. When the door closed behind me, I was alone. I reached for the envelope and slipped it into the secret pocket sewn into my wedding dress. One last breath. Then, as the church doors opened, the music and lights hit my face and summoned my memories. The first moment I met Lucas, our first kiss in the rain, his proposal under the stars, and that night, that line. A temporary choice. My walk down the aisle would witness not a love story, but a downfall. As I moved toward the center of the hall, everyone's eyes were on me. Some guests whispered, "She looks so beautiful," but those words didn't register in my ears. My gaze found Lena first seated front row in her navy silk dress. Thomas sat right next to her, and when I met his eyes, I saw a flicker of unease. Maybe he realized something was wrong, but nothing spoke as loudly as Lucas's expression. There he stood in his tuxedo, smiling as if everything in his life was perfect, as if he had no idea the storm about to hit him. I stopped 3 steps away. Lucas reached out his hand. "You look marvelous," he whispered. I took a step back instead. The priest was about to speak when I turned my back to him, facing the guests. I reached for the envelope. The sound of the papers echoed through the hushed hall. "Before we begin," I said, my voice firm, "I'd like to share some excerpts with you, not from sacred texts, but from emails Lucas wrote to his fiancée, me, and to Lena." The silence shattered into murmurs. Lena flinched. Thomas turned his head. "Dear Lena," I read, "after the wedding is over, it'll be easy for us to be together. Mia suspects nothing. Her family's funds and connections will elevate the Montgomerys to the next level." Lucas took a step forward. "Mia, please," he begged, but I stepped back. I pulled out the second page. "Would you also like me to share our creative adjustments to the company accounts? Or shall I announce that the SEC representatives are on their way right now?" The doors opened again. 2 officers in uniform entered. Lucas's face had turned ashen. Lena rose from her seat, but it was too late. Another team was waiting for her outside. Thomas silently bowed his head. Some guests watched in stunned silence. Others fumbled for their phones. "You saw me as merely a stepping stone," I said, walking toward Lucas. "But this stepping stone will be your coffin." In that moment, the panic in his eyes could no longer be hidden. His false security had collapsed. All his reputation, his smiles, his masks were revealed to be hollow. Now everyone would see. The silence that fell over the church felt like a slap in everyone's ears. As the papers hit the floor, the hem of my white dress swept over them. Each sheet was another brick in the fake empire Lucas had built, another betrayal, another lie exposed. The murmur from the guests was no longer a whisper. Some clutched their phones, recording what was happening. Others looked around in stunned disbelief. Lena had already stood up, unaware of the security team waiting for her outside. Lucas tried to step toward me, but I held my ground. He couldn't touch me now. This was my domain. This was his nightmare. "I imagined a future with you," I said, my voice steady without a tremor. "But you saw me as an investment loyalty you could buy with money." At that moment, Marianne rose to her feet, her face pale. "Lucas, is this true?" she asked. But Lucas couldn't answer. He had no words left, no excuses to defend himself. "You called us family," I continued, "but the people you've defrauded are here now. Can you look into their eyes and swear any vows?" As the SEC agent slowly approached Lucas, he remained frozen in place. I lifted my hand to my neck and took off the delicate pearls Marianne had given me, pearls that no longer belonged to me. This necklace was said to be the Montgomery family's legacy. Now that legacy is meaningless because you left behind only a name, not an honor. The guests stood in stunned silence. The priest didn't know what to do, and the church staff watched the scene in disbelief. Claire, one of my friends, couldn't hold back her tears. Watching her brother's mask fall so harshly was perhaps the hardest thing for her. I looked at Lucas one last time. His face was ashen, his gaze evasive, his lips frozen. "I gave you everything, my heart, my loyalty, my trust. But what did you do? You treated every one of these as commodities to be sold. Well, now you will pay the price." As the agents handcuffed Lucas and led him away, I heard him call my name behind me. "Mia, wait, please, I loved you." I stopped and turned around. I looked into his eyes. "What you called love was possession control. That isn't love, Lucas. It's the very system you built to serve yourself." The aisle I left behind was now a battlefield. Flowers lay crushed underfoot. Footsteps echoed. Whispers had become shouts. But I walked on, head held high, hands empty, soul free. When I opened the front doors and felt the sunlight on my face, it felt like the sign of a new beginning. Behind me were cameras, journalists, shouting guests. But ahead of me lay freedom, justice, and a brand new life. Months later, when the trial day finally arrived, the courtroom was packed. TV crews had set up camp outside, and journalists fought to catch every word from inside. But the hush in the room was more powerful than the chaos outside. This was the day to confront years of hidden corruption and betrayals. And as I walked to the witness stand, I carried on my shoulders not only my own past, but the weight of thousands of lives that one man's ambition had nearly destroyed. That man now sat in the defendant's chair, Lucas Wagner. When I took the stand, our eyes met. The man I once loved was now just a stranger, one who looked more hollow than any stranger should. It was as if every feeling inside him had melted away, leaving only wounded pride. The courtroom held its breath as it listened to me. My testimony, which began at the church doors that night, was now sworn testimony under oath. Offshore accounts, fake contracts, funneled funds, his affair with Lena, their plan to be together after the wedding. I laid it all out. My voice never wavered because I didn't have to prove anything to anyone anymore. I was defending the truth, and no matter how much he tried to escape it, there was nowhere left to run. The defense lawyers attacked my character, painting me as a heartbroken woman seeking revenge. But the documents in my hand shut them down. Even revenge has its limits, and the evidence I held was strong enough to tear down an empire. The most striking moment came when Marianne was called as a witness. The courtroom fell into a deep silence. She walked in with grace and confidence, sat down, and took a deep breath. "My son," she said, "deceived me, his sister, and this entire company. He kept us living a lie for years. But today, I stand for something more valuable than his name: the truth." At that moment, Lucas's face crumpled. His shoulders slumped. For the first time, I saw regret in his eyes because his mother was no longer on his side. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Every day brought a new witness, a new document, a new confrontation. Lena, thanks to her confession, received a 5-year prison sentence. Her face was pale, but she never looked remorseful. Blake Lucas's closest friend was fined and sentenced to community service for his involvement. The media didn't find his apology sincere, and the harshest sentence went to Lucas, 15 years in prison with no chance of parole. When the verdict was read, the courtroom fell completely silent. Only one pair of eyes filled with tears, Claire's. For her, it was not just her brother's downfall, but the collapse of her faith. That evening, we all gathered at Marianne's house. At first, the conversation was full of pain. But then Claire brought out the champagne we'd planned for the wedding, but never got to serve. "There's something to celebrate today," she said. "Truth," glasses clinked. There were tears in our eyes, tears of relief this time. Marianne came over, took my hand, and said, "You said in that chapel that it wasn't about love, but about truth. And you were right. True love sometimes means knowing when to say no, not yes." That night, as I looked out the window at the city lights, something else was shining inside me: freedom. For the first time, I felt so light, because in this story, not only did one man's mask fall away, we all found our own deeper, more honest selves. And the best part, this wasn't the end. It was the solid foundation for a new beginning. After Lucas went to prison, time passed slowly but surely. The media, once calling me the wedding bride, now labeled me the symbol of ethical revolution. But I never wanted to be a symbol. All I ever wanted was an uncompromised life, a future built on honesty and the freedom to make my own choices. Yet life had a strange way of pushing me toward a title I never asked for. Instead of running from it, I decided to transform it. From the ashes of the Montgomery Empire, a new consulting firm was born. I named it Veritas Latin for truth. My first clients were executives desperate to survive scandal, but afraid of making the same mistakes in their own companies. Soon, bigger institutions came on board: universities, banks, fund managers. Each one sought my help to spot their own Lucas before it was too late. Ironically, Lucas had tried to use me to rise higher, but by exposing his betrayal, I laid the groundwork for my own rise. Claire rescued the parts of the company that remained untarnished and turned them into an ethical investment firm. Marianne quietly but firmly launched a campaign, a foundation for integrity and honor in business. I was its first donor. The following year, the foundation funded scholarships at 3 universities. Through one of those scholarships, I met a young professor who helped me open a new chapter in my life. His name was Daniel. He'd been working in business ethics for years, but he'd learned what that word really meant through experience. For the first time, someone listened to me not to judge my past, but to appreciate the choices I'd made. And for the first time, I could simply exist without feeling the need to defend myself. My relationship with Daniel grew quietly. Neither the media nor the business world knew about it. This time, I wanted to write my own story on my own terms. A year later, at the Foundation's annual gala, he took my hand and said, "You belong to the future now, not the past." In that moment, a strange peace washed over me, because for the first time, someone saw not only what I had been through, but who I truly was. Marianne and Claire welcomed our relationship with joy. Maybe the best way to cleanse the Montgomery name is to forge new relationships that can never be stained, Marianne said one evening over tea. In her eyes, I saw not the scars of the past, but the light of the future. 2 years later, I spoke at a conference in that same hotel. When I stepped on stage, there were hundreds of young leaders before me, eyes full of idealism and questions full of courage. Some truths don't break you, I told them. They rebuild you. And what you become next is up to you. The applause was thunderous, but the loudest applause was the one I felt inside. Because that day, I was no longer the woman shattered at church doors. I was the woman who embraced truth, not as a weapon, but as a compass. Lucas's sentence continued, and I never saw him again. Some bridges don't work when they're burned, they work when they illuminate. That bridge carried me from my past into today. Now I looked forward, not back. The wedding dress I never wore was donated to a women's shelter, where it became the first step of someone's new life. I no longer called it the symbol of betrayal, but the start of rebirth. One morning, Daniel and I went for a walk at sunrise. He took my hand and said, "I want to live every morning honestly with you." It was a marriage proposal, quiet, unpretentious, but heartfelt. I said yes. This time, I didn't want a big wedding, just an intimate ceremony, a table of people who truly deserved to be there, and a love that had earned its place. My dress was simple, my makeup was light, but my eyes shone brighter than ever, because this time I was saying yes, not to someone else, but to myself.